You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And it is time now for our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight, which means we welcome in Erica Ayala. And Erica, always great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Gil and Rachel. Good to see you.
So, big news, Player of the Year. Your thoughts on the award and the voting?
Well, first of all, it was exciting to be one of the voters. This is the first time ever that the IIHF has created this category for women's hockey, and it's officially the Female Player of the Year for the IIHF, so it would include any tournament that is sanctioned under the International Ice Hockey Federation. And Hilary Knight from the United States comes away with the inaugural award.
And did that surprise you? Did you expect it? What are your thoughts?
So yes, the answer is yes, Gil. Yes, and so Hilary Knight, in the last handful of IIHF tournaments, has been able to catch up with some of the greats in the sport, and she herself was fantastic for the United States, especially later in the tournament, in the knockout tournaments. In the most recent IIHF, and a lot of the storylines around Hilary Knight going into the most recent Women's World Championships was that Hilary Knight was breaking all of these records for the United States and in World's play. That being said, for her to get 40.9% of the vote, and another person who also was on a trajectory of history and has been a very impactful player for their particular team, that being Marie-Philippe Poulin, only got 2.3% of the vote. That is very surprising. And that's a little bit, it's almost the sub-story in my opinion, because I do think that there were names on this list that had a more compelling argument to be made to win the award, since the award is happening for the first time this year. And it feels as though maybe the name recognition and the entire collection and breadth of work for Hilary Knight impacted the voting here, because Hilary Knight received 4.9% of the vote. The second highest vote getter didn't even crack 20% of the vote, and that was Caroline Harvey.
Yeah, and I was really happy to see Caroline Harvey this high. I think she had a tremendous Worlds and really just put her mark on that tournament. So very happy for her that she got this level of recognition. But really with Hilary Knight, I mean, again, she had a phenomenal year and a really great tournament. First woman to reach 100 career points in the tournament. And she's now tied for the most medals in women's worlds and most wins. But that's also, with a player like Hilary Knight, is just going to come from being there and playing for that long, right?
Right. Yeah. And you know, I think, again, and we've said this, I feel like we've said this before in the Women's Hockey Spotlight, and we definitely said it in our little green room, but I think Hilary Knight is playing some of the best hockey I've seen her play at this international stage. Like, she had a hat trick in the gold medal game, including the game-winning goal. The United States was able to really just pull away from Canada. She, led with 9 goals. But that being said, Caroline Harvey had, as a defender, led in scoring with 14 points overall. Then you also have Emma Soderberg, who I know we have talked about a lot, and we hope to have her on the show, or at least a little snippet of that soon. But I thought she had a great performance. Now, that was one of my personal top 2, just to give a little insight as voters, we could only give one name. So, you know, that the one name that you submitted was the name that would be your tally. So, you know, a player that I had up there was Soderberg, but I had an inkling. Unfortunately, I think hockey is a sport at all levels where you really have to be not only an outstanding performing goalie, but likely also a winning goalie to take an award like this. So I don't think Soderberg was likely to win the award, but Nela Luposanova, for me, had the best year in IIHF play. And what put her over the edge for me is that she dominated in the U18 tournament and still was able to keep up pace with women that are with, I'm not even joking, 20 years plus her senior. And I thought that an MVP of the U18 tournament at age 14 and led in scoring in the U18 tournament with 12 overall points, and then also able to do that in the senior tournament and play at that level and impress at the senior level. To me, I that's why I voted the way that I did. I thought that she would probably be a top 3 vote getter, and she was right behind Caroline Harvey. But you know, I think there were a lot of exciting young talents that could have taken this award.
Do you think there needs to be a change in the way the votes are tallied? Like you said, you can only submit one name, first place. Would you like to see a first, second, third kind of a vote situation, or you know, what suggestions do you have to sort of make the vote more representative?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We didn't have a lot of information. I still you know, everything got announced today. I think we've known for about a month or so that this award was coming, for those of us who are voters, but I don't know who the other voters are. I don't know how many of us there were. I don't know what the breakdown was by country, what was kind of even the criteria, if you will, for being able to vote. So that's something I'd love to see moving forward, that we see a little bit more transparency. And yes, I think it always gives an opportunity for one of those players that it's like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to use my top vote on her, but a player that is getting votes in that top 3, top 5 consistently through a ballot, I think that does say something. And if we have also that information, I think it helps paint a picture for the next time that we have a vote like this. Again, this was the inaugural Female Athlete of the Year for IIHF. So maybe Gil will see some of that.
Yeah, I of course am a fan of Emma Soderberg and probably would have given her my vote given the way she performed in multiple tournaments this year. And I feel like they obviously weight the senior tournaments much higher, but but you know, some lower level tournaments, she really performed well this past year. She also signed with the Connecticut Whale in the PHF, which is huge for the PHF.
Yeah, it's very exciting. The Connecticut Whale is a team where they are a very solid team. I think that they didn't necessarily have a goaltender that was going to steal them games in the last handful of seasons. And so we know that Taylor Gerard and Kennedy Marchment are players that were able to renegotiate their contracts. They're back. They're locked in. We also had Katarzyna Mrazova, who returned to the Connecticut Whale. So, you know, they're really looking at a different flavor, if you will, of hockey, looking at some international talent. Also, Soderberg had a great NCAA career. Can't forget about that. So I'm really excited. I think we see a lot of teams, Rachel, that are getting really aggressive and competitive with that salary cap increase. It's 1.5 million per team, and being able to draw the Alina Muellers, who we talked about on the last spotlight, Soderberg. I mean, we also talked about Norratu effectively coming out of retirement. Casey Bellamy definitely coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. You have the Montreal Force in the Premier Hockey Federation, who are almost done and tapped out with their roster. They were able to grab goaltender of the year and rookie of the year Corrine Schroeder from the Boston Pride. We see that Katie Burt returns to the league. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There is not a back-to-back championship without Katie Burt taking over in net for the Boston Pride last year. I think it was just circumstances. She has a goaltending business where she's teaching the next generation. And I think that it just, the timing didn't work out for her, but she is committed now to the Boston Pride once again. And, I think it's going to be interesting, but I know that we also have on our rundown, since we're talking about free agency, we have teams that are doing great. We have teams that, again, are almost filled with their roster, teams that are getting aggressive in the international market, the Riveters being one of them. And then we have the Buffalo Beauts.
Well, I do want to make sure we mention that Saroya Tinker is back with the Toronto Six.
Yes, that's right. Saroya Tinker signs a 1-year deal with the Toronto Six. They also hosted a free agent camp, the Toronto Six. So we have talent that, my company, Black Rosie Media, we were able to get that roster. And we have players coming from the Swedish League to come to that camp, players that played in the PHF that came to the Toronto camp, players from The Ohio State. We had players from Merrimack. We had players from what used to be Ryerson, which I believe is now the Toronto Metro University. So that was really exciting, alongside with, yes, Saroya Tinker is back, a defender for them, obviously won the Isabel Cup with them last season. But yeah, that just another example, Tinker and others, of what it looks like when you're active in free agency. And unfortunately for the Buffalo Beauts, the Minnesota Whitecaps also in this situation, they don't have a head coach. And the difference, I think, between what we see happening in Minnesota and the difference in Buffalo is that, one, Minnesota was in the Isabel Cup final. So even if you don't have a head coach, not ideal, I would argue, Rachel and Gil, but you at least have that draw. And it does seem like their general manager is being active and able to sign and re-sign some players. The Buffalo Beauts, and I have to give stick taps to Angelica Rodriguez. She reported this on a Twitter Spaces, but the understanding from Buffalo Beauts camp is that they are waiting to announce that head coach. We thought that they were going to be in position at the top of May to announce that head coach, and it hasn't happened. And that is impacting their signings. Apparently, it's also impacting their ability to hold a free agent camp. And as we see such high talent, including players that were nominated for the first ever IIHF Female Player of the Year, go off the board and sign with their competitors, it makes you wonder, what kind of Buffalo Beauts team are we going to see come November?
Time is running out as far as getting that done and getting a team together. And obviously hard to sign free agents when you don't know who your coach is and what philosophy they're going to put on the ice.
Exactly, Gil. And again, they don't have the luxury of being in the championship last year. They don't have the luxury of having other things and other players to draw from. They have been a team that not only struggled last year, but they've struggled mightily in the last 3-4 seasons. And so all of that history is compounding now. And it is a little worrisome that they have not made this hire, but also it's evident in the fact that they have the fewest announced signings in the offseason.
Well, we will keep an eye on that. And Erica, I'm sure you will update on us on it in the coming weeks. Thank you so much. Always great to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'll catch you in 2 weeks.